I wired her everything. My retirement, my savings, $350,000 over 5 years. I thought I was building our future. Then I saw the wedding photos. Her wedding to someone else. And I realized I was never the groom. I was just the bank. The sand was still warm under my feet, even though the sun was setting. I remember that detail so clearly because I kept digging my toes into it, trying to ground myself in the moment. Jovilyn was sitting next to me on that beach in Palawan, her hair catching the orange light, and she was laughing at something I'd said. I can't even remember the joke now, but I remember thinking that her laugh sounded like music. She turned to me and her eyes were so bright. "You are very funny, Mervin," she said, "not like other men I meet." I felt my chest tighten. It had been 3 years since the divorce. 3 years since Linda told me she couldn't do it anymore, that I was too distant, too buried in work, that she needed more than I could give. My kids had moved to the East Coast. Phone calls on birthdays and holidays. That was it. I'd retired at 62 with a decent pension, a big empty house in San Diego, and absolutely no idea what to do with myself. The Philippines was supposed to be a solo trip. Healing, that's what the travel blogs called it. I met Jovilyn on my second day. She was working at a beachside cafe, practicing her English with tourists. She came over to my table and asked where I was from. "California," I told her. "Oh, California. I dreamed to go there someday," she said. Her smile was so genuine. We talked for 2 hours that first day. She told me she was 22, studying nursing at a local college, working part-time to help her mother. She asked about my life. Really asked, not the polite small talk I was used to. She wanted to know what California was like, what I did for work, why I came to the Philippines alone. "I needed a change," I said. She nodded like she understood completely. "Sometimes we need to leave to find ourselves again," she said. I thought that was wise for someone so young. We went out the next day. She showed me around the island, took me to places tourists don't usually see. Her English wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. She was patient when I didn't understand Tagalog. She laughed when I tried to pronounce the street names. On the third day we went to this beach, the one where I'm sitting now, trying to make sense of everything. She asked me about my family. I told her about the divorce, about feeling like I'd wasted 30 years building something that fell apart anyway. "You are not waste," she said, touching my arm. "You are good, man. I can see." Something in me cracked open when she said that. I hadn't felt seen in so long. "Jovilyn?" I said, and I barely recognized my own voice. "I have to go back to California in 4 days. She looked down at her hands. "I know, but I don't want this to end," I said. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at me and asked, "Will you come back for me, Mervin?" I promised her I would, and I meant it. The flight back to San Diego felt longer than it should have. I kept replaying every conversation we'd had, the way she looked at me, the way she listened. Linda never listened like that. My kids never asked about my day anymore, but Jovilyn did. She cared. I started messaging her as soon as I landed. She replied within minutes. We started video calling every day, sometimes twice a day. She'd show me her apartment, small and clean, with religious pictures on the walls. She'd tell me about her nursing classes, about her mother who lived in a nearby province, about her younger brother June who was still in high school. "Mama is not feeling well lately," she mentioned one day, about 3 weeks after I got back. "The doctors say she needs medicine, but it is expensive." She didn't ask for anything. She just said it like she was sharing her day. "How expensive?" I asked. She hesitated. "Maybe $400, but I will save for it." "Do not worry." I wired her $500 the next day. "Mervin, this is too much," she said when she called me, crying. "You already so kind to me. I want to help," I told her. "Let me do this." She thanked me over and over. She sent me a video of her mother, A tired-looking woman in her 50s, saying thank you in Tagalog. It felt good. It felt like I was doing something that mattered. 2 months later, she mentioned her textbooks were expensive. I sent 200. The rent was late because her roommate moved out. I sent 600. Her brother needed school supplies. I sent 300. It wasn't much. I had the money. What else was I going to do with it? Sit in my house and watch TV until I died? She never demanded. She just mentioned things, struggles, and I wanted to fix them. That's what I told myself. I was helping someone I cared about. My daughter Sarah called one evening in November. "Dad, are you doing okay?" she asked. "You sound different." "I'm fine," I said. "Actually, I'm better than fine." "That's good. We worry about you out there alone." "I'm not alone," I said before I could stop myself. There was a pause. "What do you mean?" "I met someone. In the Philippines." Another pause. Longer this time. "Dad, that's great. When do we get to meet her?" "Soon," I said. "She's finishing school. Then we'll figure out the visa stuff." "Visa? Dad, are you serious about this?" "Very serious," I said. Sarah didn't say anything for a moment. Then, carefully, "Just be careful, okay?" "I know what I'm doing, Sarah." But the truth was, I didn't. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that when Jovilyn sent me voice messages saying, "I miss you so much, Mervin. You make me believe in good men again," I felt more alive than I had in years. I booked another ticket to Manila for January. The second trip lasted 3 weeks. Jovilyn picked me up at the airport. She threw her arms around me right there in the arrivals hall, and I felt like I'd come home. We went to Cebu this time. She wanted me to meet her family. "They will love you," she promised. Her mother, Erlinda, lived in a modest house about an hour outside the city. When we arrived, she came out to greet us. She hugged me like I was already family. "Salamat, salamat," she kept saying. "Thank you." Jovilyn translated. She says thank you for helping us, for being good to me. Her brother June was shy, maybe 16, thin and quiet. He shook my hand and called me sir. We ate dinner together that night. Erlinda cooked traditional Filipino food, dishes I couldn't pronounce but tasted incredible. They asked about California, about my life, about my work. "You are engineer?" Erlinda asked through Jovilyn. "Yes, retired now," I said. She nodded approvingly. "Good job. Smart man." I felt accepted in a way I never had with Linda's family. They'd always looked at me like I wasn't quite good enough, but here, in this small house with people I'd just met, I felt like I belonged. On the 5th night, Jovilyn took me to a rooftop bar in the city. The view was stunning. You could see the whole skyline lit up, boats in the harbor. She was wearing a dress I hadn't seen before, yellow with small flowers. "You look beautiful," I told her. She smiled. "You always so sweet to me, Mervin." We talked about everything that night. She told me about her dreams of becoming a nurse, of maybe working abroad someday. "Maybe in California," she said, looking at me carefully. "Maybe," I said. She reached across the table and took my hand. "Mervin, I need tell you something." My heart started pounding. "What is it?" "I think I am falling in love with you," she said quietly. I couldn't breathe for a second. "Jovilyn, you do not need to say anything," she interrupted. "I just need you to know. You make me happy. You make me feel safe. I love you too," I said, and I meant it. I loved her more than I'd loved anyone in years, maybe ever. She started crying. Happy tears, she said. We talked about the future that night, about her finishing her nursing program, about applying for a fiancé visa, about her moving to California. "I want to take care of you," I told her. "I want us to build a life together." "You really mean this?" she asked. "I really mean this." Before I left the Philippines, I gave her $5,000. This is for your tuition and rent, I said, so you can focus on school and not worry about money. She cried again. She told me I was the best thing that ever happened to her. I flew back to California feeling like a different man, like I had purpose again. The video calls continued. Every day. Sometimes she'd call me late at night, her time, just to say goodnight. I started researching fiancé visas. The K-1 visa process looked complicated but doable. I filled out preliminary forms, gathered documents, started planning. When I mentioned it to Jovilyn, she got excited. Really? You are serious? Of course I'm serious. I said, I want you here with me. She bit her lip. But Mervin, I need to finish my program first. Just one more year. Then I can come. That's fine, I said. We have time. What I didn't know then was that a year would turn into 2, then 3, then 5. And in that time, I'd send her more money than I'd ever imagined. It started small. She needed $1,200 a month for rent and bills. I set up an automatic transfer. Then her nursing program required new fees. $3,000. I sent it. Her mother got sick again. Had to go to the hospital. $2,500. I sent it. I never questioned it. Why would I? This was the woman I loved, the woman I was going to marry. By the end of the first year back, I'd sent her close to $30,000. But I wasn't counting. I was just helping. That's what you do when you love someone. You help them. Around month 14, something shifted. It was subtle. She started calling less often. My phone is acting strange, she said when I asked about it. Maybe you need a new one, I offered. I can send you money for that. No, it is okay. I will fix it. But she didn't. The video calls became audio calls, then just messages. Sometimes she wouldn't respond for hours. Once, a whole day. Sorry, Mervin, she'd say. School is very busy right now. I understood, or I told myself I did. One night, about 6 months into the second year, we were on a video call. She was in her apartment. I could see the room behind her. Then suddenly the screen went black. Jovilyn? I said. Sorry. Her voice came back. Connection is bad. When the video came back on, she looked flustered. Where were you? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. I was right here, she said. Just the internet, you know how it is. But something felt off. She was wearing a necklace I hadn't seen before. Small, gold, delicate. That's pretty, I said, pointing to it. She touched it quickly. Oh, this? My aunt gave it to me. For my birthday. Your birthday was 3 months ago, I said. She laughed, but it sounded forced. She forgot. She just gave it to me now. I let it go. What else could I do? Accuse her of lying over a necklace? That would be insane. But that night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing that moment when the video cut out. The look on her face when it came back. The request for money got bigger. $4,000 for her brother's tuition. $6,000 when their house needed repairs. $7,500 when her mother needed surgery. I sent it all. I was dipping into my retirement fund now, but I told myself it was temporary. Once she came to California, we'd figure it out together. She'd work. We'd both contribute. It would be fine. Sarah called again in the spring. Dad, I've been thinking, she started. Thinking about what? About this girl, in the Philippines. I felt my jaw tighten. Her name is Jovilyn. Right, Jovilyn. Dad, are you sure about this? What kind of question is that? It's just, have you actually met her family? Verified anything she's told you? Yes, I met her family. I stayed with them. What are you implying, Sarah? She sighed. I'm not implying anything. I'm worried. You've been sending money, haven't you? That's none of your business. Dad, it is my business. You're my father. I don't want to see you get hurt. I'm 65 years old. I said, my voice harder than I intended. I think I can handle my own relationships. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're being used. I hung up. I actually hung up on my daughter. I felt guilty immediately, but I was too angry to call back. She didn't understand. She'd never met Jovilyn. She didn't know what we had. But that night, alone in my house, I opened Facebook. I searched for Jovilyn's profile. I'd looked at it before, of course, but casually. Now I scrolled through carefully. There were photos from parties, photos with friends, photos at restaurants I knew she couldn't afford. And then I saw it. A photo from 2 weeks ago. She was smiling, standing next to a young man. His arm was around her shoulders. The caption was in Tagalog. I copied it and pasted it into Google Translate. Family day with my favorite people. I told myself he was her cousin. That's what I told myself. I asked her about it the next day. Casual. Light. I saw you posted a photo with some guy. Who's that? There was a pause. Then, oh, that is my cousin. From my father's side. You never mentioned him before. There are many cousins, Mervin. I cannot tell you about everyone. She sounded annoyed. I backpedaled. No, of course. I was just curious. Why? You do not trust me? I do trust you. I'm sorry. Forget I asked. She softened. It is okay, my love. I know long distance is hard, but soon I will be there with you. Just a little more time. How much more time? I wanted to ask. But I didn't. I was afraid of the answer. Year 3 was when things really started falling apart, though I couldn't see it yet. The money was flowing out faster than ever. $1,500 a month for rent, $2,000 for school, $4,000 for an emergency car repair. I started selling things. My coin collection that I'd had since I was a kid. Some old tools I didn't use anymore. I needed the cash. My retirement account was getting dangerously low. I knew I should stop. I knew this wasn't sustainable. But every time I thought about cutting her off, she'd send me a message. I love you so much, Mervin. I pray for you every night. I cannot wait to be your wife. And I'd believe her. I had to believe her. Because if I didn't, then what was I doing? What had I been doing for 3 years? I tried to visit again in year 3. I told her I was coming. I'd already booked the flight. But she panicked. Mervin, no, not now, she said. Why not? Because I have exams. Very important exams. I cannot miss. I'll just be there for a week. We can work around your schedule. No, please. I need to focus. Maybe in a few months? I canceled the flight, lost $500 on the cancellation fee, but I told myself she was right. School was important. I didn't want to distract her. The video calls stopped completely in year 4. She said her phone was broken. Then she said the camera didn't work. Then she just stopped trying to turn it on. We only talked on audio now, and less frequently. Maybe once a week if I was lucky. Are you avoiding me? I asked once. No, Mervin. I'm just so busy. Why you always question me? I'm not questioning you. I miss you. I miss seeing your face. I miss you too, she said, but her voice sounded distant, distracted. I heard voices in the background sometimes, people talking, music. Where are you? I'd ask. Just at a friend's house, she'd say. Or just studying at the library. But it never sounded like a library. One night, about 4 months into year 4, I couldn't take it anymore. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, and I realized I'd sent her almost $200,000, maybe more. I hadn't been keeping exact track. The number made me sick, not because of the money itself, but because I realized I couldn't name a single concrete thing it had paid for. Where was the nursing degree? Why wasn't she finished yet? Where were the receipts? The proof? I got up and went to my computer. I opened my banking app and started going through the transfers. $230,000. In 4 years, I felt like I was going to throw up. I called her the next morning. "We need to talk," I said. "Okay. What is wrong?" "Jovilyn, I've been thinking about the money. I've sent you a lot, and I'm not seeing results." "Results? What you mean results?" Her voice was sharp now. "I mean you're not done with school. You're not here. We're not together. What is this money actually for? You think I am stealing from you?" "I didn't say that." "You did." "You think I am a bad person." She was yelling now. "Jovilyn, calm down. Do not tell me to calm down. I work so hard. I take care of my family. I love you. And you call me to accuse me?" She hung up. She didn't answer my calls for 3 days. When she finally did, she was crying. "I am so hurt, Mervin," she said. "I thought you trust me." "I do trust you," I said, desperate to fix it. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things." "You promise you will not question me again?" "I promise." "Okay. I forgive you." And just like that, I was the one apologizing. I was the one who'd done something wrong. That's how good she was. Year 5 started with a text. "Mervin, I need your help. Big emergency." I called immediately. "What happened?" "My brother, June. He is in accident. Motorcycle. He is in hospital." "Oh God. Is he okay?" "I do not know yet. They say he needs surgery. It costs $8,000. I wired it that day. Never questioned it. Never asked for proof. She sent me one photo of June in a hospital bed. He looked fine, not like someone who'd been in a motorcycle accident, but I didn't say anything. 2 months later, the house needed a new roof. $6,000. Then her mother's medicine got more expensive. $3,000. Then Jovilyn herself got sick. Needed tests. $5,000. I was breaking. Financially, emotionally, mentally. I'd sold my car and bought a cheaper one. I'd stopped going out to eat. I was living on rice and canned beans. My retirement account was at $43,000. That's all I had left. And I realized, sitting at my kitchen table one morning in September, that I had to see her. I had to go there and see with my own eyes what was happening. So I booked a flight. I didn't tell her. I was going to surprise her. I landed in Manila on a Tuesday. I messaged her from the airport. "Hey, what are you doing today?" She replied an hour later. "Just studying at home." "Why?" "Just wondering. Miss you." "Miss you too." I took a taxi to the address I'd been sending money to for 5 years. The address, she said, was her apartment. It was in a decent neighborhood, not wealthy, but not poor either. When I got there, I stood outside for a moment, trying to work up the courage to knock. A woman came out of the building. Middle-aged, carrying groceries. "Excuse me," I said. "Do you know if Jovilyn lives here?" The woman looked at me confused. "Jovilyn?" "Yes, young woman, early 20s, studying nursing." The woman shook her head. "No one here like that. How long you think she live here?" 5 years. The woman laughed. Not meanly, just surprised. No. I live here 7 years. I know everyone. No, Jovilyn." I felt the ground shift under me. "Are you sure?" "Very sure." I called Jovilyn. She answered on the 4th ring. "Mervin? What is wrong? Where are you?" "I told you. At home." "Why? What's your address?" "What? You know my address." "Tell me again." There was a pause. "Why you asking this?" "Just tell me, Jovilyn. I am at 243 Rizal Street. Why?" "No, you're not. I'm standing here right now. You don't live here." The line went dead silent. Then, "Mervin, I can explain." "Where the hell are you?" "I am at my aunt's house. I stay here sometimes to save money on rent." "You told me you lived at this address. I've been sending money for rent at this address for 5 years." I know, I know, I am sorry. I did not want to tell you because what? Because you will be angry. You're damn right I'm angry. You lied to me. I did not lie. I hung up. I was shaking. I stood there on that street corner in Manila for 20 minutes, trying to breathe. People walked past me. Cars honked. The city moved around me while I stood frozen. She called back. I didn't answer. She called 5 more times. I turned off my phone. I went back to my hotel. I sat on the bed and I made a decision. I called a local private investigator. I'd seen the ads online. I thought it was crazy when I first saw them. But now I needed to know. I need you to find someone, I told the investigator. His name was Rico. Give me everything you know about her. I sent him Jovilyn's information. Her full name, her phone number, her social media profiles, the addresses she'd given me, everything. How long will it take? I asked. 2, maybe 3 weeks, Rico said. I will be thorough. I flew back to California. I didn't tell Jovilyn where I'd gone. I ignored her calls and messages for a week. Finally, she stopped trying. 3 weeks later, Rico sent me an email. The subject line was, "Investigation complete." I sat at my desk for 15 minutes before I could open it. When I did, the first thing I saw was a photo. Jovilyn at a birthday party, smiling, wearing a wedding ring. The email explained everything. Her real name was Jovilyn Santos Cruz. Santos was her maiden name. Cruz was her married name. She'd been married for 6 years. Her husband's name was Carlo. They had 2 children, a boy, 5 years old, a girl, 3. The address I'd been sending money to? It didn't exist, at least not as her home. The money I sent for rent probably went into a joint account she shared with Carlo. The tuition? She dropped out of nursing school in her first year. That was 7 years ago. The mother who kept getting sick? Erlinda was fine, healthy, living in a nice house in a nice neighborhood, a house that my money probably helped build. Rico had attached photos. Jovilyn with Carlo, his arm around her waist. Jovilyn with her kids at a playground. Jovilyn at a family gathering, wearing that same gold necklace she said was from her aunt. Everyone around her wore matching shirts that said, Cruz Family Reunion 2023. I sat there looking at those photos for hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt empty, completely, utterly empty. I opened my laptop and wrote one message. I know about Carlo. I know about the kids. I know you were never going to come to California. I sent it. Then I blocked her number. I blocked her on Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, everywhere. I deleted every photo I had of us. I went to the bank and closed the account I'd been using to send her money. I changed my phone number. For 2 days, I felt nothing, just numb. Then Sarah called. Dad? Dad, are you there? I've been trying to reach you for a week. I changed my number, I said. Why? I told her everything. The whole story. 5 years, $350,000. The wife, the kids, everything. She didn't say, I told you so. She just listened. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I'm coming out there. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. I'm taking time off work. I'll be there tomorrow. She arrived the next afternoon. She hugged me at the door and I broke. I actually broke down crying for the first time since the divorce. She held me while I sobbed. I'm so stupid. I kept saying, I'm so goddamn stupid. You're not stupid, she said. You're human. You wanted to be loved. That's not stupid. We sat at my kitchen table and I showed her everything. The bank statements, Rico's report, the photos. She looked through it all without saying a word. Then she closed the laptop and looked at me. Dad, you need to talk to someone, a professional. You think I'm crazy? No. I think you're hurt, and I think you need help processing this. I didn't argue. 2 days later, I was sitting in a therapist's office. A woman named Dr. Chen, who specialized in relationship trauma. "Tell me what happened," she said. I told her the whole story. When I finished, she asked, "Why do you think you kept sending money even when you saw the red flags?" I didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, "Because I didn't want to be alone anymore." She nodded. "That's honest. That's a start." Therapy became a regular thing, once a week, then twice a week. Dr. Chen helped me understand something I'd been avoiding. I wasn't just a victim, I was also complicit. I chose to ignore the red flags. I chose to believe the lies because believing was easier than facing reality. "You wanted to be needed, Doctor," Chen said. "That's not wrong, but you can't buy love, you can't purchase significance." "I know that now," I said. "Do you?" Because knowing it intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. She was right. I started calculating everything in my head. $350,000 over 5 years, that was $70,000 a year, almost $6,000 a month. That money could have paid for a new house, could have started college funds for my grandchildren, could have given me security for the rest of my life. Instead, it built someone else's life, a life I was never part of, a life that never included me. The shame was worse than the anger. I couldn't tell anyone except Sarah and Dr. Chen. How do you admit you were that blind, that stupid, that desperate? People would judge me. They'd say I should have known better. And they'd be right. 4 months after I blocked Jovilyn, I got a message from an unknown number. "Mervin, this is Jovilyn. Please, I need to explain." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I wrote back, "There's nothing to explain. I know the truth. You do not understand. I did what I needed to survive. By lying to me for 5 years, my family was poor. My husband, he cannot work much. We needed money. You had money. So you used me. I gave you companionship. I made you happy. Is that not worth something?" I couldn't believe what I was reading. "You were married the entire time." "Yes, but I still cared for you. You didn't care for me. You cared for my bank account." She didn't reply for a few minutes. Then, "I am sorry, Mervin. I needed to survive." That was it, her final message. "I am sorry. I needed to survive. Not sorry for lying. Not sorry for the 5 years. Just sorry," with a justification attached. I blocked the number. That was 3 months ago. I sold my house last month. The big house in San Diego that I'd lived in for 20 years. I couldn't afford it anymore. I moved into a small apartment in a cheaper neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, basic furniture. It's all I need now. Sarah comes to visit every other weekend. She brings my grandchildren. I'd forgotten what their laughter sounded like. I'd been so focused on Jovilyn, on that fake future, that I'd let my real family slip away. But they're here now, and I'm here, really here, present. Sarah asked me last week, "Dad, do you regret it? All of it?" I thought about that for a long time. "I regret how it ended," I finally said. "I regret being blind, but I don't regret trying to love someone, even after everything, because the alternative is never trying at all, never opening yourself up. And that's not living, that's just existing." She nodded slowly. "I just wish I'd loved myself more first," I added, "before I tried to love someone else." I'm sitting on my new porch now. It's smaller than my old one. I can hear traffic from the street, but it's mine, paid for with what's left of my savings. I'm 65 years old. I have about $40,000 left. That's it. That's everything. Some men my age have hundreds of thousands saved, retirement plans, security. I have an apartment and enough to live simply for maybe another 10 years if I'm careful. After that, I don't know, but I'm not scared anymore, not like I was. Because I learned something through all of this. The loneliness that made me vulnerable to Jovilyn, it's still here, but I understand it now. Loneliness isn't solved by another person. It's solved by learning to be okay with yourself, by building a life that feels worth living even when you're alone. I still think about her sometimes, wonder if she thinks about me, wonder if she feels any guilt at all. But mostly I think about myself, about the man who was so desperate for connection that he'd ignore every warning sign, who'd rather believe a beautiful lie than face an ugly truth. That man doesn't exist anymore. Or maybe he does, but he's different now, more careful, more aware, less trusting, but also more honest. I'm not healed. I don't know if you ever really heal from something like this, but I'm better, and that's enough. Doctor, Chen asked me last session what I'd say to Jovilyn if I could say anything without consequences. I thought about it. I'd say thank you, I told her. Dr. Chen raised her eyebrows. Thank you for teaching me what I was worth to myself, for showing me that I'd rather be used than be alone, because now I know that about myself, and I can change it. She smiled. That's growth, Mervin. Real growth. I hope she's right. I'm trying. Every day I wake up and I try to be better than I was yesterday, to rebuild what I lost. Not the money, that's gone. I'll never get that back, but the sense of self, the dignity, the understanding that my worth isn't measured by whether someone loves me. It's measured by whether I love myself enough to protect myself. Sarah's kids are coming over this weekend. We're going to the zoo. It's a small thing, but it matters. These moments matter more than grand gestures or expensive gifts or sending money halfway across the world to someone who doesn't even see you as human. They see you as a resource, and I let myself be that resource because it was easier than being alone. But I'm not alone. Not really. I have Sarah. I have my grandkids. I have this apartment. I have myself. And for the first time in 5 years, maybe longer, that feels like enough. It has to be enough, because it's all I have left.